Howdy folks, welcome back to Doing Brew. Today we're going to be installing a ledger stone backsplash behind our stove top and also along the wall by our sink. This of course is part of our kitchen remodel, and we looked at a whole lot of stone over a long time, stone and tile for the backsplash. We settled on MSI stone, specifically the ledger stone, for a number of reasons. Of course, we like the color and the style. We didn't want to go with anything that's too big of a format, and we didn't want to go with anything that's too small. And we thought the different textures and colors between the large stones and the smaller stones and the dark and the light colored stones would really add an interesting effect. And honestly, it's been up for a few days now, and we're really pleased with it. Now the first step you got to do is lay out your tile. Take a look at where the gaps and seams are. One thing I'm not a big fan about is kind of the lack of quality control, if you will. Now don't get me wrong, overall the stones and the panels are really nice, but there are a few instances where the adhesive that's used to lock the stones together maybe a little bit sloppy with that and a little bit smeared on the front or oozing out through the crack. For those tiles, we'll put those aside and we'll use those in areas that maybe aren't going to be seen as readily, or maybe a little higher up, or maybe even save them for a future project, which you'll see that video coming soon. So the first thing you have to do is lay out your tile. I laid out about 4 boxes, vacuumed them clean to get any of the dust from shipping off of them, and then sealed them with 2 coats of a premium sealer, which really made the difference. The tiles went from kind of chalky and with no sheen whatsoever on them to a smoother and almost a matte finish. Plus, it's really key to seal them beforehand, because if you get any of the thin set on, it very easily washes off with a damp sponge. So with all the prep work complete, let's go ahead and start putting up our ledger stone. And as before, we're going to be enjoying the music of Jonathan Jones throughout this video. There will be a link at the end of this video and a link to his website in the comments below. Check it out. So the first thing we have to do is remove all of the outlet face plates. Of course, we're going to be tiling around the outlets. And then I need to adjust the electrical boxes. Now, when I built out the kitchen, I installed adjustable electrical boxes because I knew I was going to be putting in some sort of tile or stone. I just didn't know how thick. And these are pretty slick boxes that allow you to make those adjustments after the installation. Now, no worries if you don't have these special boxes because you didn't anticipate putting stone up. They make electrical box extenders like these. The different colors are different sizes, or this one, which you do your tile installation and then install the box. Now, before we start breaking out tile, I need to cover up our new gas cooktop here. Don't want to damage that. And I decided to start in the corner. I figured this was going to be the most difficult spot of the tiling project, and so I may as well start here because this is where I have the most control as I put in the first couple of tiles. So what I need to do is I need to cut the tile under the window to the right height. That's pretty easy to do. And then I need to cut each of the mating tiles to the thickness of the tile they're going against. That way you get a real pretty seamless corner. So I'm going to put a mark at about 7/16. Use my speed square to get a nice straight line, which of course will be helpful on the wet saw after the fact. And then I'm going to mark to the left side of the windowsill stool for that final mark for my cut. Use a speed square to mark that out. That's the cut under the window. Now, pretty simple process of using the wet saw, the tile saw, to make those cuts. And now doing the all-important dry fit, just to make sure everything goes together as you anticipated, and make sure you've got a real nice corner. And that corner looks really, really good. I'm real happy with the way that turned out. And I chose Megalite for my thin set, mostly because I'm also going to use this on a future project on the fireplace, and I didn't want to use a real heavy thin set. This is very strong and very light, and it's specifically designed for stone, and stone of the dimensions that I'll be using. And we'll mix this up in accordance with the directions. Now for these first couple of stones, I'm going to mark it out with a Sharpie where I need to apply the thin set. Now read the back of your thin set bag. It'll tell you the type and dimensions of trowel to use. I'll put the thin set on heavy and then spread it out with the trowel, and then pulling the trowel at about 45 degrees, I'll remove the excess. Plus, in areas that I can't get with the trowel, I'll do what's called back buttering on the tile panel to ensure that I've got proper coverage of thin set. And then you just want to put the tiles in place. When you set them in place, you want to give them a little bit of a wiggle to ensure good adhesion to the wall and even disbursement of the thin set. Now, we'll get the next mating tile to the one that goes to the corner and line it up. You want to check where the two pieces come together. This is too much of a gap. This is a common occurrence with natural stone products, not man-made, so you're going to have some inconsistencies that you're going to have to figure out how to work around. And one thing I want to mention is you need to wet your tiles with a sponge before you put them onto the wall. That just ensures that the thin set doesn't dry too quickly, as that dry stone sucks the moisture out of the thin set. It just helps it set up better, set up stronger. Okay, now we're coming up on one of the trickier parts of our entire install job, and that is cutting the tiles around all the pieces and parts and moldings of the windowsill. Here again, this is a test of patience. And honestly, I went through a couple of tiles until I got a perfect fit. But what you want to do is put your tile up against the molding profile that you need to match, try and sketch it out with your Sharpie, take it to the saw, do your best to cut those lines, and you'll bring it in and out a couple of times, both to your work site and to the saw, until you finally get that profile right. And give it a little bit of patience, folks. You'll get it eventually. Now that's a nice fit. Couldn't ask for anything better than that. Now we'll go ahead and back butter that piece and set it into place. Now the remainder of this level are just straight cuts, pretty easy to do. Save a little bit of time, I'll speed up the work. Next I got to measure and cut tiles for installation of the stones around the outlet box. Now here I'm measuring the thickness of the stone. Around your outlet boxes you want to pick a thickness and do your best within about a 1/16 of an inch to stay with that same thickness of stone. That way when you install your plate cover, it installs flush to the wall. So I back buttered that stone, set it into place. Now I'm just checking it for plumb, because you want to make sure that your stones are maintaining some level of trueness or plumbness as they go up the wall. And with that third stone set in place, I need to measure and start prepping for that stone panel coming out from the corner to the left. So I measured out from the corner to the edge of the outlet box. Then I'll use my speed square to trace out the dimensions of the outlet box for those cuts. And measuring from the bottom up
I'll draw a straight line and we'll go out and cut it.
Okay, so I was at the saw. I made those cuts. Everything looked like it was going pretty nicely, and then I had to remove the middle piece to go around the outlet box. So gave it a couple of taps, and that's what happened. I think this is going to be a recurring problem. So I'm just going to go with this and put it in around the box, and then I'm going to have to put just one piece and another piece to connect up to the box. It should be okay, and I think when it's all said and done, no one will ever know the difference. So let's go ahead and install it.
I think it might be time to go. West side of our home, and was shot down.
Now I want to make an important point here. You notice that stone I'm putting in place now extends beyond the right side of the outlet box. You want to do your best to ensure that you don't have tiles ending or beginning at the edges of the outlet box. And next up, we'll put another full panel along that top edge of the lowest level of stone, and we'll just very simply mark the right side edge of that electrical box and mark a true line. Now that shows me where the bottom tile is. I don't want to cut that stone. I want to cut all the stones above that. And wow, I apologize for the wavy effect in this camera shot. That's just the frequency of the saw getting transmitted up through the tripod to the camera. I thought this would be a really cool angle to capture, but the saw kind of did me in. And unfortunately, the same effect occurs maybe 2 or 3 more times in this video. Now you may notice that I'm repeatedly flipping the tile upside down and kind of back and forth. That's because I don't want to undercut too much on the facing side and ruin the tile. So I'm just kind of walking that cut in. Just be careful, take your time, you get a nice pretty cut. And dag nabbit, I broke another tile. Well, as I said before, I'm just going to go with it. Now next up is a great example of you don't want a straight line lining up with the edge of your outlet box. So that tile is good. This tile here, I'm going to cut that off with the saw, and that way I've got a new piece that's going to go about 1 inch over to the right of the outlet box. When it's all said and done and you have the plate cover on, it's subtle, but it really makes the difference between, you know, a good job and a really good job. And yeah, that's a little bit tight on the left side of the box. I was so focused on the right side of the box that I didn't notice how tight that was on the left side. Probably would have been better to end it in the middle of that box, or maybe extend that top tile over to the left a little bit. But we'll see how that works out. Now I have to cut the tile, the bottom tile, a little less than 1 inch to allow that to slide all the way over and contact the left side of that box. So we're going to mark and we're going to cut one of the stones and let that slide over, and I had the dimension right, but now I have an unacceptable gap there on that bottom stone that initially broke off on me. Now again, this is an issue of working with natural materials. These stones are cut and put into a panel, but the stones are anywhere between 1 inch and 1/16 and maybe 7/8 of an inch. They shoot for 1 inch, but you're going to have some variation. So that little sliver there is going to take up that gap, and when you put that faceplate on around the outlet, you're not going to notice that at all. And I get to take a little bit of a breather and put a full panel in place. And now I need to prep for the cutout around another outlet. So I'll follow the same process. I'll put that panel below it, mark my points, draw the plumb lines with the speed square, mark my bottom cut line, and I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to grab my Dremel and see if I can cut along that line and cut all the way through. And I'll tell you right now, it was successful, but this one cut took me about 20 minutes. and that was kind of cool looking, so we'll show it in the Doing Brew's super slow-mo. Alright, now that I've got that bottom cut line complete, now it's just a simple process of cutting those plumb lines on the left and right up to that bottom cut line. And as before, you see me flipping that tile to ensure that I don't overcut onto the facing side due to the curvature of the blade. Now a little tap there, a little bit of pressure, and that cut piece falls away pretty nicely. I do have to nibble away that little bit of extra material there in the corner, but that's a pretty easy process on the saw. And we'll bring it in for a quick dry fit, and that's pretty nice. That fits pretty nicely. Real happy with that. And one more stone to cut to complete this level.
Okay, so I've got the whole second row cut out to include all the cuts around the outlets. So now it's time to mix up some more thin set and set those in place. You guys have already seen the hard part, so I'm going to move through this part real quick, almost like a time lapse. So let's get them all along. Okay, so that went on real nice, and the cutouts worked out perfect. Just a recommendation, it's probably common sense, really obvious, but if you've got a lot of outlets and things you got to do the cut-arounds on, do those ahead of time. Have a whole row ready to go, because that way your thin set won't dry out while you're doing multiple cuts. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get it just right. So we're done with that row. The next row is pretty easy. The only thing I have to worry about is the pipe for the pot filler for the stove, but that should be a pretty easy thing to work around. One thing I wanted to mention, I did not mention it when I started the second row, is you can see I took one of the tiles, usually about twice this length, and cut it in half. You want to make sure you stagger your joints. That way the step joints don't all line up in a row vertically. They blend in anyways, but you just want to make sure. So make sure you stagger your joints. Let's go ahead and put the third row on.
Now I need to prep for that cut around that pipe. Pretty easy measurement from right to left, and then bottom up. And we'll mark that point on our panel, left to right, and now the bottom towards the top. Now I'm just going to use the pipe that I'm going to use for the final install of my pot filler and trace around that so I can get pretty close on where the hole needs to be. Now, always a good opportunity to buy a new tool, and I never not jump at that opportunity. And this is just a really pretty drill bit with the diamond edge sparkling there in the light, so I had to do a slow-mo of that. But it does make very quick work drilling through the stone, and makes an absolutely perfect hole. And while I thought I measured carefully, I just barely make it around that new pipe for the pot filler. And you can see there on the top where I carved around for the flange that goes on the outside. Now install the rest of the tiles, and there's a quick overview of where we are at this point, almost at the end of day one. And I'm running out of work time here, folks, so I'll set this one last tile in place. I'll measure for the next, and we'll call that the end of day one. So bright and early in the morning, made that cut on that tile on the left side, and we'll go ahead and install it. Now at this point I'm going to break from moving up along the hood, and I'm going to do probably again the hardest work of this whole tile install and do the cuts around the windowsill. I specifically put this off until the beginning of day 2 because quite honestly this takes a clear head and a lot of patience, and I didn't want to attempt this after working all day. So the first measurement I need to take is the left to right measurement, which is about 1.5 inches, and then I just kind of eyeballed that lower cut. So you can see with the double X's where I need to cut away the waste, and we'll do a dry fit, and not quite there yet. I need to remove a little bit more of that girth that goes between the tile and the underside of the sill. So went back out to the table saw, made another cut, and that actually looks pretty doggone good. So I'm going to go with that one. Now the next piece is the mating piece that comes from top to bottom onto that piece we just cut. I need to measure for the amount of material I need to remove to allow it to set down onto that tile. Kind of following the same process as before. I make my marks, mark my waist, and do a dry fit. Wasn't good enough, back out to the saw, and that dry fit looks pretty good. And we're over the hump there. This is an easy part of cutting a one single large stone to fit to the right side of that outlet box. Okay. Now I'm going to apply some thin set and get these set in place permanently. Now I need to cut a large panel that fits into the corner above this outlet box. I froze this image so you can see the detail of the cuts I made that ensure that this piece fits in almost like a glove to the corner. All those individual cuts really took some time, but in the end it fit together real nicely. I was real happy with it. And now it's time to fill in under the sill and behind the sink. Honestly, this is a pretty easy part of the install job. All these are cut to 3 inches uniformly and set into place. Pretty easy going. Now reverse the process as I did on the other side, where we have to cut around the right side of the windowsill stool. Now, I'm not going to complete the install of the stone here because we've decided to go with a different cabinet above this area. So I'll have to fill in that space with stone after the new cabinet arrives. Okay, now pretty simple process of filling in the void below the hood. And now we come to another tricky part. I need to cut a stone that fits under the hood at what looks like about 5/8 of an inch, and then that odd angle that the hood flange comes up at. So how do we get that angle? Well, use an old trick with a playing card. I'll put that card in plumb to the wall, trace that angle, and then cut that out, and then transfer that to the tile. And let's see how that works out. And we'll take a quick trip back to the table saw, and that actually came out pretty nice. Happy with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in a few stones from right to left. Again, I've got another tricky edge that I've got to cut. And for this one, I know that it's going to come to a point all the way up. So I'm just going to mark my dimensions and draw a straight line up to that point, and I'm going to use my playing card again to get the top part of that angle. So there's that long diagonal that'll run the extent of the stone that mirrors the slope of the hood. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and set it in place.
Rest all I'm gone, I
And I'm going to take a break from all the measuring and thinking and install a handful of flat panels all the way up the right side of the hood. Now up at the very top of the tile, the top row, I had to nibble away a little bit of stone to ensure that that screw was still accessible, but that's not even noticeable. Okay, we're on the home stretch now, folks. Starting to look really nice. Okay, so I'm reversing the process here as I did on the right side. Now that gap there on that angle piece on the top side of the hood flange, that's a little much, but the thickness of the glass covers that up, so I'm okay with it. Looks good. And we are literally on the home stretch here, guys. A handful of flat panels up to the ceiling, and we are done.
So as you can see, folks, really not difficult to do. Yes, it's a little time consuming, and you do need to have patience with some of those tighter cuts, some of those smaller cuts, to make them look really nice. But if you take the time, you have the right tools, and you have the patience, you can knock out a great stone backsplash or a stone application anywhere in your house. Overall, I'm really pleased with how the stone cut, how it was easy to work with, and most importantly, how it went on the wall and how it looks on the wall. Overall, we're really pleased with the appearance of the stone. In fact, we like it so much, we're going to go ahead and use the same stone on our fireplace. Now, the fireplace project is going to be a fun one. We're going to put this same ledger stone tile on, plus we have to incorporate a wooden mantle on both the front and back side, as it's a three-sided fireplace. Plus we're going to do some work that I have never done before, and that's installing a solid stone. We're not sure if it's going to be marble or granite or what have you as the hearth. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these projects that will be coming up in the next few weeks. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'm happy to get back to you and help you out any way I can so you can complete your project. And hey, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It's always appreciated.
As promised, here's a link to Jonathan Jones's YouTube channel and a link to one of my videos that I think you might like.
Good luck on your next project. Take care, folks.